How's it going, everybody? Marvel Across 316 back with another comic book flashback. Today, folks, we are looking at the X-Men issue number 13. This is released in July of 1965, and the cover date is September of 1965. And we are looking at the second appearance of the Juggernaut today as we continue this story here. Juggernaut made his first appearance in X-Men issue number 12. And this is the continuation of the story here. Juggernaut is the stepbrother of Professor Charles Xavier, and he is giving the X-Men one heck of a show here. It is by far one of the X-Men's most challenging battles they have ever been in. Of course, this is looking at an early encounter with Juggernaut. The X-Men have only been around for maybe 2 or 3 years at this point, so they're still pretty new. They're still in training, and so this is definitely one for the books. It is their hardest fought battle, even comparing it to the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants with Magneto. Juggernaut has been the X-Men's hardest foe to fight thus far, as we've been looking at these comic book flashbacks as we've started way back in issue number 1. So now we're at issue number 13, and this is the continuation of what was going on, or 14 rather. And this is issue number 13. And so we are now continuing what happened in issue number 12. The Juggernaut has arrived on the scene in the X-Mansion, and he has cornered Professor Charles Xavier. And so this issue is brought to you by Stan Lee, who wrote this issue. We have Jack Kirby on the layouts, penciling by Jay Gavin, inking by Joe Sinnott, and the lettering by Sam Rosen. So let's go ahead now and continue this story. Last issue, the X-Men gave it every ounce of bit that they could give, but none of these X-Men are able to stop the Juggernaut. And now it has come to this situation. Juggernaut has finally met his goal to get to Professor Xavier, and he is so close to pounding Professor Xavier that none of the X-Men are even able to get up. They're all startled. They've all been defeated. The only one still left standing is Jean Grey, who is Marvel Girl. But Professor Xavier is going to protect Marvel Girl here. Says, get out of the way. You have your orders. Obey them. And Juggernaut says, those are the last orders you're ever going to give, my long-lost stepbrother. And he reveals to Professor Xavier that it took him years to get out of the tons of stone that he was buried underneath in the Korean War. If you don't remember, Professor Charles Xavier and Kane Marco, his stepbrother, who is none other than the Juggernaut, fought in the Korean War, and there was a huge landslide of stone that fell on top of the Juggernaut after he had touched the Ruby of Centior, which transformed him into the Juggernaut. And he has been buried underneath all that rubble ever since, until now, where he has finally made it to New York City to confront his stepbrother. And so Professor Charles Xavier reveals to Juggernaut that he has a supreme weapon that he's going to be using, but the Juggernaut thinks that he is bluffing. Well, Juggernaut is taken back by a moment here because Professor Charles Xavier hits him with a brain blast here that startles him just for a moment. A few minutes of respite here, and this gives the X-Men a chance to bury the Juggernaut underground as Marvel Girl lifts him up in the air with her telekinetic power. Cyclops blasts a hole in the ground, causing Juggernaut to fall into this hole, and they trap him just for a few minutes. Professor Charles Xavier then orders the X-Men to stall the Juggernaut as long as he can so he can activate his mental helmet. And this mental helmet is basically going to enhance Professor Charles Xavier's mental ability. It's going to give him extra power that is needed to defeat the Juggernaut. And on top of this, he's going to be sending these mental brain waves across New York City so that he can recruit some help, because he needs all the help that he can get, because Juggernaut, like I said, is the hardest foe that the X-Men have ever fought. So now Juggernaut has noticed, and he's like, what are these fools doing? They know that I'm the Juggernaut and I'm unstoppable. So he starts to even pull himself up, even in underground here. We're going to see that Cyclops and Angel are going to be the first two X-Men to try to stall the Juggernaut, but they're just going to be very unsuccessful in stopping him. We have a lot of great action scenes in this story, drawn by Jack Kirby and Jay Gavin. I mean, this is just really good stuff here. I really enjoyed reading this issue. It is by far one of my favorites to read in this series so far. Well, the brainwaves pick up all across New York City. The Teen Brigade, who is Rick Jones and his friends, they hear it. Even Matt Murdock, who is Daredevil, who's busy right now with his court case, he even hears it, but he's too busy dealing with legal matters right now. So Professor Charles Xavier continues to reach out to anybody that he could think that could be of some help. Well, now Beast and Iceman are going to have to come and try to stall Juggernaut because Cyclops and Angel are not doing anything good. I mean, they're trying their best, but it's just not working. And even Cyclops' beam stuns Angel because Juggernaut grabs Angel and puts him out in harm's way here. Well, Iceman definitely comes for the save here, causing Juggernaut to slip because he's trying to get up the stairs. Meanwhile, we see Johnny Storm is going to make an appearance in this issue, and Johnny Storm is going to play a key role in defeating the Juggernaut in this issue. At first, when he hears the mental command from Professor Charles Xavier, he ignores it because Reed Richards has told him in the past that if you hear anything, it could be a trap from Doctor Doom, it could be the Wizard, you just don't know. And of course, at this time, the Fantastic Four are preparing for Reed and Sue's wedding that occurs in Fantastic Four Annual Number 4. Well, Professor Charles Xavier starts to get angry here because we see that Johnny Storm dismisses his mental command, and while this is all happening, Juggernaut breaks free of the freezing encasement here, and I mean, just nothing seems to be stopping the Juggernaut. As we see, Beast even tries to trap him in the danger room, but as we can see here, that even though he's successful in trapping the Juggernaut in the danger room, Juggernaut is going to destroy all of these weapons, all of these arsenals that the X-Men use for their training, and he unleashes even the most powerful of all arsenals, which is this rolling 10-ton barrel of steel. And even the Juggernaut is able to stop it, and he rolls that 10-ton steel barrel, and it pretty much stops the Beast in his tracks, leaving the Beast unconscious. Well, Professor Charles Xavier gives us another crack here. Johnny Storm is driving down the road when he gets the alert again. This time he knows that it's no fluke. This has to be real. And he obeys the mental command of Professor Charles Xavier, makes it to the X Mansion here. Professor Charles Xavier's work is done, and now it's time for the final confrontation. We see Marvel Girl is going to roll Professor Charles Xavier to the location where the Juggernaut is, and Juggernaut's like, so Xavier, despite everything you could do to stop me, despite all your puny X-Men, I have cornered you at last. Charles Xavier says, perhaps it is I who have cornered you, Kane. Never use that name again. I am the Juggernaut. Kane Marco no longer exists. Well, Marvel Girl lifts him up in the air with her power here. Here comes Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. He is flamed on, and he's going to be blasting Juggernaut with his fireballs here, but that doesn't seem to stop the Juggernaut. But Professor Xavier is guiding the Human Torch here, and he needs the Angel to help as well. And we see here that as the Angel makes it on the scene, the Human Torch raises his hands, goes supernova, blinds the Juggernaut. Then Professor Xavier commands the Angel to swoop around, fly him around his body for a few minutes, causing Juggernaut's helmet to come off during the battle with the Beast. The Beast tried to loosen the helmet of the Juggernaut, and finally the Angel is able to get the helmet off of the Juggernaut. And then we see Professor Xavier is going to use that weak spot and blast Professor Charles, or he's going to blast the Juggernaut with his mental power here. And even the Juggernaut without his helmet is still trying to get his hands on Professor Xavier. Professor Xavier wishes this would go another way, that this would end in a different way, but because Juggernaut is so powerful, he has to be put down. So with one last mental beam here, Juggernaut is out for the count. Johnny Storm's like, how did you do that? You were just looking at him. But no, that's not the case. And we see Professor Charles Xavier then is going to help Johnny Storm get back home by causing him to forget the whole encounter ever happened. Johnny Storm makes it back to the Fantastic Four headquarters, and then as the days go by, we see all 4 members of the X-Men are now trying to rest up because of all their injuries that happened. And we see Marvel Girl is going to be the nurse here, taking care of the X-Men. And once they rest up and are good to go, they're going to have to clean up the X-Mansion, because their reward is basically getting a broom and sweeping up the place and preparing all the damages that occurred. So that's how we end issue number 13 of the X-Men. Up next, we're going to be introduced to some more cool villains here. What villains we'll be looking at, you'll have to find out in the next issue as we look at issue number 14. But before then, go ahead now, drop a like on this video. Comment down below what you thought about this particular issue. And as always, subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one.